Hi, my dearest of family. I hope everyone is doing well and you are ready for a little bit of a Saturn retrograde period, which is going to be starting on the 29th of June. This is taking place on 19 degree of Pisces. It will remain on the same degree for 4 weeks until the 22nd of July. And why I have decided to make a video about this because we've got Nessus also on 19 degree of Pisces. And Nessus will remain on 19 degree until the 22nd of August. So we've got 2 months while the same degree is getting activated. So this is a big deal. This is something that is very important. So first of all, do you have any planets on a 19 degree of the mutable signs, which are Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius? Then it is an important video for you. And I will break this down for my paid YouTube members also for each of the signs. So if you want to know how it might play out, consider to join my YouTube family. But before we do, I would like to announce that I've got 3 spots left for my Ultimate Predictive course. This is going to be a year course, and I will teach you 25 different types of timing techniques. We will be practicing on your own chart as well, whoever is online. And the possibility also to work with me as well, because I'm going to be choosing 2 students who I can trust, and then they can take over the readings from me. And by the way, I extended the discounted price until the end of the month, at the end of June. So grab your seat right now. Let's get going. Let us have a look at this important constellation. First of all, what is a retrograde planet? A retrograde planet is when the planet seems to be moving backwards, but actually it is not. Let's not go into the astronomical part of things, but what we want to be focusing on is that every single retrograde cycle is connected to the sun. So the retrograde cycles are connected to our relationship to the sun. So the Saturn retrograde lasts for approximately about 9 months altogether, if I consider the shadow period as well. So what is the shadow period? A planet is going to go retrograde on a certain degree, and then it's going to move backwards to a certain degree. So let's suppose that Saturn starts on its retrograde motion on 19 degree, and it's going to go back, let's say, to 12 degree. So as soon as it's hitting the 12 degrees, Saturn is already in the shadow zone. So it's going to be back and forth, obviously, from 12 to 19. It's going to take a little time to get there. And then from 19 back to 12. And then eventually it's going to be reaching the 19 degree again at some point. And that is when the shadow period finishes. So altogether, it takes 9 months. Did you ever consider why Saturn is one of the planets of parenthood? Because it takes approximately about 9 months to give birth to a baby. Did you ever consider why Saturn has got planetary joy in the 12th house? The 12th house is 9 sign away from the fifth. Sorry, 8 sign away, the 8 sign away from the fifth. And then the first house is the ninth one when we actually give birth. So that's why the 12th house is connected to the very last month of your pregnancy. But I don't want to go into these type of things. I just wanted to kind of make you think a little bit why Saturn is one of the parents, for example, that is connected to parenting, because this has been a question before. People ask me. Here is one of my explanation to that. Of course, Saturn is also the ruler of the 10th house, naturally speaking, and that is one of the parenting houses, also the 4th and the 10th axis. So, of course, Saturn has got something to do with parenting. So, but we are here to talk about this Saturn retrograde, and it's important from multiple points of view. First of all, we just had the Cancer solstice happening. We had the Capricorn full moon. So obviously the dispositor of that full moon is Saturn. And I'm going to be making a separate video, by the way, because Saturn is about to make a sextile to a asteroid called Abundantia. And Abundantia is about abundance, but I'm going to be making a separate video about that because that's quite an interesting one. And Abundantia is spending approximately about 9 months in the sign of Capricorn. So we've got Saturn going retrograde. First of all, so to summarize on that, Saturn is turning retrograde on 1925 Pisces, and then Saturn will turn direct on 15th of November on 12th degree of Pisces. So on one hand, the Saturn retrograde, the retrogrades are always about reflection. Many people are afraid of Saturn retrograde, but actually because Saturn is naturally about slowliness. Therefore, a retrograde is always kind of good for Saturn because it's naturally slow. So some of the questions you might want to ask during this Saturn retrograde, and I'm going to be giving you very specifics as well. How do you cope with your workload? Do you manage your time well? Are you mature enough? Are you responsible enough? Are you planning something? Or just you allow life to throw plans at you? Are you afraid of something? Are you working very hard that you might be neglecting, for example, your privacy, your family life, your personal life? Are you too ambitious? Are you kind of like emotionally detached and cold? So these are going to be some of the questions that might be popping up for you with a Saturn retrograde. But as I mentioned, oh, I want to make some one other interesting fact to talk about. Whenever Saturn goes a retrograde, 12 days later, it's going to be trining the sun, or the sun is going to be trining the sun. This is always the case. So during the retrograde motion, we've got two trines happening between the sun and Saturn. So during the Saturn retrograde phase, the sun will make two trines. The first trine, which is also called as the accelerated trine, by the way, uh, occurs approximately 12 days after Saturn has stationed. What it means is that Saturn seems to be actually just kind of stopping. It's kind of like Saturn rules time. So it can feel like that the time has stopped. And then we've got the second trine, which is called the decelerated trine. And Saturn is slowing down in preparation to station direct. Why am I sharing this piece of information with you? Because I'm just wondering if there is going to be a kind of beneficial trine between Saturn and the Sun. Do we need to be afraid of Saturn retrograde? And every single planet is connected to the path. The retrograde motion is connected to the path of the Sun. So a trine is actually an indication that if we do the self-reflection, if we slow down a little bit, if we are patient enough, that is going to take us really far because the sun is something to do with our evolutionary process. That is our final destination. Just think about Saturn being the planet of rules. And in the sign of Pisces, Pisces represents the subconscious mind. So one of the questions that might be popping up with this retrograde is whether you have got this subconscious mind that has created certain type of rules. And it's kind of like living your life according to a rule book. And maybe this Saturn retrograde, because it's conjuncting Nessus, which is the abuser or the abusee as well. Also, it could talk to you about karmic ancestry problems as well. But I'm going to break down, I'm going to give you keywords for Nessus in a second. So this could really talk to you about throwing away the rule book. Or if you do not have a rule book, then you're going to have to create one. And maybe those rules that you have created in your subconscious are already outdated. Why am I mentioning that? Because Saturn is the dispositor of Pluto, and Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius, which is surely talking to us about something that needs to be renewed. That's the renewal of something, and something needs to be, in a way, disposed as well. So, as I mentioned, this Saturn retrograde, in my opinion, is very special because it's extremely close to an asteroid called Nessus. So, let's talk about Nessus a little bit. And then I'm going to try to put it together in the meantime with Saturn as well. If you want to be looking up where Nessus is in your chart, its astrological number is 7066. And this is the third centaur to be discovered. And it has got 120 to 123-year orbit. So it means that it spends quite a lot of time in one particular sign, in the sign of Pisces. By the way, Nessus entered in 2014, and then it's going to be leaving only in 2033. So it's almost a 20-year cycle. But its orbital period is a little bit funny. So it tends to be spending a little bit more time in certain times and a lot less time in other signs. And Nessus' name, by the way, means baby bird. So let's look at the mythology of Nessus, because that is going to be giving us some important keywords that Nessus means. So Nessus was trusted to take Hercules' wife on a ferry across the river, and he tried to rape her on the boat. Hercules went after him and killed him with a poisoned arrow. And while he was dying, he gave a little blood to his wife, and he kind of called it as a magical blood. And he told her if Hercules ever cheated on her, she just needed to use this, and Hercules would return to her with ever-dying love. When she felt that Hercules had cheated on her, she put some of this blood on his shirt, and Hercules died. And then after, his wife committed suicide. So what did we learn from this story? We've got someone who tries to rape us and then lies to us, and then we still believe the person. So Nessus is lies, betrays, cheats, rape, revenge as well, and putting our trust into the wrong person. So when it comes together with Saturn, which is on one hand kind of like represents world leaders, like politics, for example, or even kind of like the CEO of a company and so forth. This is pretty much of a reality check in a way with Saturn, and also limitations and so forth. But this could really talk to me about that those authority figures are basically taking the piss. And this is going to be revealed to us. How politicians are lying, betraying, cheating on us in a way. And maybe there is going to be actually a sexual scandal as well. The reason why I would say that, because as you can see on the chart, what we see here is that we do have got one of the tightest aspect also Saturn has is actually a sextile to Mars. And Mars could represent some type of sexuality matters, especially in the sign of Taurus. Moving forward, if you have got a prominent Nessus in your chart, that could really talk to you about ancestral karma. where there were certain type of abuse, ancestral trauma, for example. And typically, we need to be able to release that Nessus in our chart. So, for example, if you've got Nessus in the 10th house, you've got some ancestral trauma around mom, around work, and so forth. Maybe in that particular area, you allow people to take advantage of you. It can feel like that we are a minority in that particular part of our chart. Nessus' further keywords are sexual abuse, narcissistic behavior, what area of life you are an abuser or an abusee. And remember, abuse could be physical, emotional, mental as well. And at the same time, it would represent trust issues and even endless desire as well. In relationship, Nessus actually can be very prominent as well, because often it starts in a very passionate way, and you might feel that you would give up anything for that person's love. And after a short while, the relationship starts kind of struggling. And then all of a sudden, that relationship ends, especially if you have got something kind of like a synastry aspect with Nessus, I would say within about 2 degrees. A great movie example is The Enough with Jennifer Lopez, which was aired 2002, 24th of May. And South Node and Nessus were in conjunction, opposing Saturn. Brilliant example. So, what is this movie about? Because it might be telling us what to expect, actually. First of all, we have got Jennifer Lopez, and she gets to know this guy at a cafe. And she's not really interested. By the way, yeah, she's not really interested, but she gets scammed. Okay, basically, that's the story. She gets scammed into this relationship, and then she falls in love with this guy. And then they buy a house to get, I mean, the guy buys a house because he's quite rich. And then the guy cheats on her all the time. And then she figures it out like 5 years later. And then he starts beating her up, and then she runs away, and eventually she kills the husband. So that's the story there, very briefly. So as you can see from this story, because we've got Nessus as well as Saturn being, in an opposition on that particular day, I'm guessing we might be experiencing certain type of similar stories, for example, in the world as well. And at the same time, of course, it could be happening on a personal level too. But I would say that a couple of questions that you might want to ask yourself is, how did we become the abuser or the abusee? How do we limit ourselves? What are we obsessed with? Are you ready to discover the hidden realm of your subconscious? How the world leaders abuse their own power? How we allow that inner saboteur to talk to us? These are going to be some major questions. And because Saturn also represents the fear, it's the fear of being abused. It's a very kind of negative kind of constellation, really. It's very easy to get drawn into kind of like scams, and we can be afraid of old age as well. And then we have to be relying on others. This is very much about a reality check. When we are an abusee, then we have attracted them for a reason. The most important part is that how you are going to be getting out of this situation. How do you restrict yourself? What is the shadow side of of yeah, basically how, you know, that how are you going to be getting that skeleton out of the, of that closet, basically, because you might be somehow imprisoned. And once you are able to figure these out, then I feel like this could be a brilliant period of time for you, because then you are going to be um, released. With Saturn, it's very easy to kind of having that fear of being in prison, to be in hospital, having to be secluded, the fear of remaining alone. And then with Nessus, we might become quite manipulative. So it's very important to embrace the darker side of ourselves, knowing why we do certain type of things. Maybe we are trying to avoid the void in our soul by badly wanting to belong to someone. And also this could, indicate that we feel guilt, but we don't know why we feel guilt. It is to remember that you cannot help everyone. You can kind of feel sorry for people and then you can acknowledge their pain, but you cannot rescue everyone, especially if they do not ask for it. Because what could be happening is that they are going to take advantage of us. And Nessus actually like doing that. Also, with Saturn, I would say that it's very possible to attract alcohol addicts, drug addicts, for example, if we are not integrated Saturn well in our life. Because Saturn, in one way or another, it's going to be teaching us something. And then when we are not learning, then we're going to attract these abusers. And maybe it's about having to carry the burden alone. My partner doesn't help me at all. I have to sacrifice things for my children. I am tired. I have no strength anymore. And then we end up playing the role of the victim rather than trying to get out of that victimization situation. Or we get stuck with our parents. We become spinsters, loners. My parents need help all the time. And don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with it. But what it means is that you don't live your life, you don't give full attention to your life. So I feel like Saturn will want us to work on all these. Pisces is all about giving up on something. And giving up is not always a sign of weakness, by the way. It is the sign of admitting that we need to learn more to tackle a certain type of issue. This could talk to us about the fear of rejection, the fear of being used, the fear of going insane as well, or the fear of being hurt, the fear of being punished for, I don't know, not praying, not following the rules, the fear of unknown. What is it about? What is about to come? And who are we going to be attracting? Maybe we are attracting mentally unstable people, or we're going to be attracting healers, musicians, or someone who chooses celibacy over intimacy, for example, and so on. So I would say that on the mundane level, this could really talk to us about that someone who is going to be using their status, they are going to be using their own strength, abusing their strength. Olympic Games are coming up. So I'm guessing there is going to be some drug scandal happening there, because Saturn can represent strength as well. And Saturn is also the planet of tests. So there is going to be some drug tests happening, and unfortunately, it might be quite shocking. This is one thing I'm actually expecting. Also, this could be talking to us about injustice as well, by the way, because Saturn is the planet of law and order, and obviously how we abuse the legal system. Even though the legal system is usually associated with Sagittarius and Jupiter, but the judge itself is Saturn. So imagine a court case where Saturn is going to be favoring someone, they shouldn't be. Or it could also talk to us about that someone who is going to get paid off in a way to rule, let's say, against one team. Okay, so I just wanted to make this very brief video about Saturn retrograde. We can really talk about it for a very long time, but to summarize on that, it is a 4.5 month period every year. So it's about 38% of the time Saturn is retrograde. So forget about not signing contracts and so forth, because this is, as I said, a pretty long time. With the shadow period, it's 9 months. So you cannot stop life for 9 months and then just live for 3 months, right? So that's important. Saturn might be, it's kind of stationary uh, for at least, a week, but it's going to be staying on the same degree for 4 weeks. So that's pretty, important. And especially during that stationary period, we might feel certain type of burden or weight on our shoulders, some type of responsibilities. We can get pressurized. And it's very easy to get, in a way, disconnected from your family, even from your purpose as well. You can lack a bit of motivation, especially during the next 4 weeks or even 8 weeks with Nessus being there. And maybe you have got a lot to think about, and it is somehow disturbing you because you do not know what type of decision you need to be making. The next 12 days, from the 29th of June onwards, it's very possible that you feel quite tired. You really need to be watching out around I think it's the 11th of July, when Sun and Saturn are going to be making the trine. What is happening within that 12-day period? Because then Sun is going to be highlighting for you what exactly the Saturn return is about to teach you. This is about, though, an opportunity for you to review, to reassess your obligations, your duties, the work you do, to reconnect with your, in a way, karma, your higher calling, to look at your own self-limitations. And sometimes it is necessary to step back to make sense of something that is maybe right in front of you. This is about a reality check. And, it's very easy to get swayed away with a Piscean energy anyway. Saturn says to you that you have to be simplifying something. We don't need to overcomplicate things. Jupiter likes doing those type of things. And of course, that's the debate here, because Saturn is in a Jupiterian sign at the moment. You know what? With Saturn retrograde, we made a mistake. It's time to actually fix it, to correct it. It's about sometimes going back to basics. With Saturn, we do the groundwork. So that's what retrograde is about, retracing your step to see where that mistake happens. I'm going to go back and then I'm going to be, fixing it to the best possible, to have the best possible outcome in a way. And once we have done that, then the reward is going to be coming later on. And that's the whole idea here. Sometimes because every single planet to be retrograde is connected to the sun. So this could really talk to you about looking at the ways you can upskill yourself, for example. Obviously, the sun is in the sign of Cancer. So this is about reconnecting with the past, reconnecting with your heritage, finding ways to be happy. Sometimes we're going to have to tie up some loose ends with family members. We're going to have to be finishing off our home, for example, because we are building a home. Or we just need to be able to cut off certain type of karmic ties with a member of family, an unfinished problem that has not been resolved. And this Saturn retrograde is going to give you the opportunity to do so. So guys, this is the breakdown of Saturn retrograde in conjunction with Nessus. As I said, one of the tightest aspects Saturn has is actually a sextile to Mars, as well as a sextile to Ceres. And we've got an opposition to Juno as well. So we've got a lot of aspect going on here, but I've broken this down in my weekly update video for my paid members. So if you are interested about how Ceres, Mars, and Juno Grand Trine is playing out, then you might want to consider joining my YouTube membership. Have a great one, everyone. See you soon. Bye-bye.